A little less than a couple of weeks ago, President Joe Biden, made a pretty stunning announcement based upon Joe Biden when he was not president, when he was simply campaigning, and frankly, a stunning announcement relative to what we have seen over the past 2 decades, which is, in particular, our involvement in Afghanistan, which many called the forever war. And Joe Biden has announced that war will be ending months from now, September 11th, or by months from now, unconditionally. And to tell us and put that into context and tell us what that means, Stephen Wertheim, the director of grand strategy at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, joins me. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Great to be back.
So, okay. Why don't you tell us just basically what he announced and why this represents a departure for Joe Biden in some respects. And then we'll talk about to what extent it's a departure from what some people refer to the blob, as it were, or the inertia that has built up in Washington, D.C. And I guess we should also start by putting into context for those folks who aren't aware of just how long the Afghanistan war has been.
We're coming up on 20 years as we approach the 20th anniversary of 9/11. U.S. military operations began the next month after 9/11. So it looks like we will just fall short of about a 20-year war for the United States. Joe Biden, coming into the presidency, had a decision to make. The Trump administration had reached an agreement with the Taliban by which U.S. troops, all U.S. ground troops, were supposed to be withdrawn by May 1st of this year. And the idea was that in the meantime, the Taliban would do a number of things, like relinquish any ties to al-Qaeda, and there would be peace talks between the Afghan parties, between the Taliban and the U.S.-supported Afghan government. The peace talks did not make much headway. They were delayed for various reasons. And so Biden entered office deciding, did he want to breach the agreement that the United States made with the Taliban to fully withdraw ground troops by May, or did he want to withdraw? And he essentially has chosen to withdraw, but he took some time to try to bring about progress first between the parties in Afghanistan. That didn't succeed. So instead of fully withdrawing U.S. ground troops by May 1st, he says he will start the withdrawal by then, and they'll all be out, the president announced, by September 11th of this year, which should allow for NATO member forces to also withdraw their ground troops. Most likely, the ground troops will be able to be withdrawn several months after May, and so it shouldn't take all the way until September 11th. But this is a pretty profound thing, because we've seen several presidents say they do not support endless war. Barack Obama said that when he decided to, in fact, continue endless war in Afghanistan. Donald Trump said great nations do not fight endless wars. He did put the war on a path to termination, but he didn't complete that. And he actually ramped up U.S. military operations in the country in his first several years in office. So for Joe Biden, who obviously supported the war on terror and the war in Iraq originally after 9/11, to make this decision took, I think, a lot of guts.
All right. Well, let me just back up for one moment. Like, to what extent do you think a second-term president, Donald Trump, is actually going to pull out the troops in May? I mean, I know this is, speculation, conjecture, but I just remember Iraq and there being dates set and things being punted constantly. And I mean, and we'll get to this, but one of the things about Biden's announcement, which I thought was probably the most important was the idea of there's no conditions. I'm making a decision and there's no conditions. There's nothing that can happen that will change this decision. There was a lot of those things, conditions built into the Trump thing that was, we hear all the time. Like, it's not my fault that we're not leaving because they didn't do their job. That's not happening with Biden. But do we have a sense? I mean, do you have a sense, or is that just like, I don't know? Am I asking you to predict, what would have happened in an alternate universe?
Hard enough to predict what Donald Trump would do, even harder to predict, I guess, a hypothetical Donald Trump that would have continued in office. I actually do think that Trump was prepared to fully withdraw from Afghanistan, or at least a good portion of the man wanted to. There were reports after he lost the election that I think perhaps he wanted to be the president to end the war. So there were reports that he was looking into making a full withdrawal, and he actually did reduce troop levels in Afghanistan then. He was trying to perhaps effect a full withdrawal before Joe Biden came into office. So it is possible to me that he would have gone through with it. However, it's also possible that Trump, who announced that he wanted to withdraw from other places like Syria, would have once again been foiled by the members of the Pentagon or the national security community who wouldn't have wanted to do those things. So it is possible that Joe Biden actually had an advantage in being able to withdraw from Afghanistan, which is to say, from reports, it looks like Pentagon leaders did not want the United States to terminate the mission, but Biden heard them out. He ran a process that did not involve going on TV or tweeting first and announcing something and then having to walk it back. But he really, listened to people and ultimately said, this is the decision.
All right, fair enough. I won't, impossible to know that scenario, but I was just, curious in that respect. All right, so let's just focus on Joe Biden in terms of his history. And during the campaign, he was not talking about any type of full withdrawal from Afghanistan, was he? I mean, and so this is a departure for Joe Biden. It feels like, I don't want to. This is not Bulworth here, and we can later we will talk about sort of like how durable the Biden doctrine is, but just give us a context for Joe Biden, the man, as to where how we got here, because some of the things he said in his announcement, over the past couple of weeks, were pretty, we're off brand.
Right. So I think we have to make sense of how Joe Biden got to this point, because you're right. On the one hand, in the campaign, he did say he wanted to bring an end to forever wars, but his campaign statements were fuzzy about what exactly that meant, and suggested that there would be fewer ground troops in Afghanistan and the Middle East, but not a full withdrawal necessarily from Afghanistan itself. But if you look back over what has been reported about Biden's positions on the Afghanistan war over about the last decade, within the Obama administration, he was consistently urging a smaller force, not a withdrawal, but a smaller force narrowly focused on the objective of fighting terrorists as opposed to building an Afghan state, eradicating the heroin trade, all those larger, when the Obama administration effectuated a surge of troops to about 98,000 U.S. troops in the early aughts. And it does seem as though Biden has felt for quite some time that the United States did not have clear or achievable objectives in Afghanistan. And his own remarks in announcing his decision suggested exactly that. And they're significant, I think, because they do implicitly blame President Obama for making the wrong decision. What he basically said was, we had a legitimate objective to conduct military action in Afghanistan, which was to decimate al-Qaeda after 9/11 and to punish the Taliban. And that was it. And anything further was not an achievable objective, was not the right objective, and should not have been attempted.
Hi, I'm Sam Seder. You can watch the rest of this interview and more on our Peacock show, which streams at 5 p.m. weekdays on The Choice from Peacock TV.